You good-for-nothing woman. This is why we're failing. You're ruining my business. Does your broke-ass father even have a business? Get out. The words, screamed by my husband Marco Griffin, echoed through the stainless steel kitchen. It was 8 p.m. on a Friday, and the famous critic from the City Chronicle was at table 7. Marco had just stormed in, dragging Isabella, our new 20-year-old hostess, with him. She had messed up an order. I was just trying to plate my signature braised lamb when he saw the dish and snapped. He grabbed the hot plate. He didn't just drop it. He hurled it at the wall inches from my head. Hot ceramic, herbs, and my rich 12-hour sauce exploded everywhere, spattering my face and my apron. The kitchen, usually a symphony of shouts and clanging pans, went dead silent. Leo, my sous chef, froze mid-chop. The young dishwasher looked like he'd seen a ghost. I just stared at the ruined lamb sliding down the white tile. My lamb. My recipe. Then, slowly, I lifted my head, feeling the heat of the sauce on my cheek, and looked right into the black lens of the kitchen security camera. My name is Phaedra Marquez. I am a classically trained chef, and for 5 years, I was the ghost who built my husband's empire. That night, I was finally ready to become the witch who tore it down. The silence in my head was louder than the ringing in my ears. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't even flinch. I just set my tongs down on the steel counter. Phaedra, are you okay? Leo whispered, his knife still hovering. I didn't answer him. I walked calmly past Marco, who was breathing hard like a bull, and past Isabella, who had the decency to look pale. I went to my staff locker in the back hallway. I didn't grab my purse. I pulled out a simple black backpack. It was my go bag. I had packed it 6 months ago, right after I found the receipt for a gold necklace I never received, hidden in his gym bag. Inside the backpack was my personal laptop, a small gray hard drive, and a thick, leather-bound book with my initials, PM, embossed on the cover. I walked back into the kitchen, right past them again. I went to the trash can. I untied my apron, stained with his rage and my food, and dropped it on top of the garbage. Then, I pulled out my phone and sent a text to a contact saved only as V. The text had one word, tonight. I pushed open the heavy back door and walked out into the alley. I could still hear Marco in the dining room, his voice instantly changing, laughing his fake, charming laugh as he schmoozed the critic's table. I wasn't at home. I wasn't at my sister's. By 10 p.m., I was sitting in a corner booth at a 24-hour diner, the smell of old coffee and bleach in the air. The fluorescent lights made everything look harsh. Sitting across from me was Victor, the owner of the city's most successful restaurant group. Victor was a shark, the apex predator of the city's food scene, and he'd been trying to hire me, to poach me for years. I had always refused, out of a stupid, misplaced sense of loyalty to Marco. He finally did it, didn't he? Victor said, not unkindly. He'd heard the rumors. I didn't need to explain. I just unzipped my backpack and slid the thick, leather-bound book across the table. His eyes lit up. He knew what it was. These are my recipes, Victor, I said, my voice quiet but hard as steel. My grandfather's, my mother's, and mine. The ones he built his entire brand on. The ones he claimed he invented. Victor opened the book, his fingers tracing the old, handwritten pages. He smiled, a cold, sharp, calculating smile. I've had that empty location across from him for a year. Phaedra, he said. I was just waiting for you to be ready. He never should have let you go. Let's ruin him. I learned later from Marco himself what his next morning was like. He woke up hungover and alone in our expensive condo, the sun streaming in. He told me he actually laughed when he saw I was gone. He figured I'd run to my sister's to cry and that I'd come crawling back by Monday, begging for my job. He was that arrogant. He decided to treat himself for the trouble and went online to buy a new $4,000 Italian espresso machine. He put in the credit card number, the personal card linked to our main joint account. Declined. He huffed, annoyed, and tried again. Declined. Fuming, he logged into our joint bank account to see what the problem was. He froze. The balance wasn't zero. It was $50.38. He scrolled down and saw a single, massive transaction, timed at 2:15 a.m. It was a transfer for exactly 50% of the account's total funds, down to the penny, moved to a new, unlinked account. My lawyer had set it up perfectly. It wasn't theft. It was a clean, surgical division. He told me that was the first moment his hangover turned to cold, sharp, agonizing fear. Marco, now in a full-blown panic, broke every speed limit to get to the restaurant. He wasn't worried about me. He was worried about his Saturday night service. He told me his plan was to scream at Leo, find out where I was, and threaten to sue me until I came back. He was rehearsing his speech as he pulled up, but he never even made it to the door. He slammed on his brakes in the middle of the street, a taxi blaring its horn behind him. Directly across from Griffin's, in the beautiful, empty brick building that had been vacant for a year, a crew was unfurling a massive banner. It was gleaming white, with elegant, sharp black font. It read, "Coming soon, Phaedra's the original." My name, my brand, and that one, perfect, killing word, original. He stumbled out of his car, his phone forgotten. He just stared, and that's when he saw him, standing on the sidewalk, holding a coffee and pointing up at the sign, was Victor, his biggest rival. Victor just smiled, a wide, predatory grin, and gave Marco a little wave. The war was public, and I had just fired the first shot. Marco's panic about the sign was just the beginning. With no staff, he had to call and cancel all the Saturday night reservations, blaming a gas leak. He spent all of Sunday trying to hire a new kitchen crew, but no one would take the job. On Monday, he went to the bank, ready to move money from the business accounts to hire a temp agency. He sat in his expensive office and tried to log in. Access denied. He tried again. Access denied. He called the bank, yelling that his system was down. I know exactly what the bank manager, Mr. Harrison, said because my lawyer, Ms. Verma, had prepped him. Mr. Harrison calmly informed Marco that he couldn't access the accounts. "Mr. Griffin, we received an emergency injunction from Ms. Marquez's lawyer. All joint assets are frozen." Marco apparently screamed. "On what grounds?" Mr. Harrison's reply was like a gunshot. The filing cites spousal abuse, supported by video evidence and financial mismanagement, he said, specifically using company funds to support an extramarital affair. Marco was silent. He couldn't make payroll. He couldn't pay his suppliers. He couldn't even pay Isabella. The very next call Marco got was from Mr. Henderson, our prime beef supplier. "Marco, I heard about your accounts," he said. "I'm sorry, son, but I can't send you any more product until you're clear." Marco, desperate, probably promised to pay him in cash. But Mr. Henderson just sighed. "That's the other thing, Marco. Phaedra just signed an exclusive contract with me for her new place. I'll be sending all my prime cuts to her now. Good luck serving frozen burgers." Before Marco could even process that, his office door swung open. It was Leo, my former sous chef, followed by my two best line cooks and our head bartender, Alex. They weren't yelling. They just walked up to his polished mahogany desk. One by one, they each placed their set of restaurant keys on the desk, the metal making a loud clack in the quiet office. "Sorry, Marco," Leo said, his voice flat. "We work for a chef, not whatever this is." They turned and walked out. In the span of 5 minutes, Marco's entire supply chain and his entire senior staff were gone. While Marco was staring at a pile of keys, I was in a small, clean apartment Victor had found for me. I wasn't celebrating. I was working. I plugged the gray hard drive into my laptop and opened the folder labeled insurance. It was all there. I was showing Victor's legal team the why. This wasn't just a reaction. It was a planned out counterattack. I had been collecting evidence for a year. I showed them the receipt for a $20,000 Rolex he bought for a client, which I later saw on Isabella's wrist. I showed them the text on his laptop he'd forgotten to close, with her calling him Big Boss. But the worst, the thing that made me buy this hard drive, was the legal paperwork I found. He had taken my grandfather's, my abuelo's, signature braised lamb recipe and filed a patent for it under his own name. He had stolen my family's legacy. And his mocking my father? My broke-ass father was a retired carpenter. A carpenter who had co-signed our original $200,000 business loan. A loan Marco had stopped paying and which I had been secretly paying off myself for the last 2 years. Cornered, broke, and with no staff, Marco did the only thing he knew how to do. He tried to charm his way out. He went to the restaurant's Instagram page, which had 50,000 followers. He recorded a tearful video from his office. His hair was a mess. His eyes were red. He probably rubbed them with onions. I don't know what to say. He started, his voice cracking. My wife, Phaedra, she's going through something. She's mentally unstable. He looked right at the camera, a tear rolling down his cheek. She's stolen all our money, and she's trying to destroy this dream that we built together. He kept talking about his passion, his art, and how heartbroken he was. And at first it worked. The comments flooded in. Stay strong, Marco. We're with you. He seemed so heartbroken. What a monster. What kind of woman does this? She's evil. He thought his charm had saved him. He thought he had won the public. He had no idea what was coming. Marco's victory lasted for about 12 hours. On Monday morning, the critic's review came out. The review he had been so excited for. The headline was a cannonball, a restaurant in chaos. It was brutal. While the face of the brand, Marco Griffin, was all smiles and charm, the kitchen was in shambles, the critic wrote. He mentioned hearing a loud crash and vulgar screaming from the back. He wrote that after the face left his table, the service fell apart. And the food? He was merciless. The food, once legendary, was bland, uninspired, and tasted frozen. Frozen. Marco must have tried to run the Saturday service by himself, using cheap, frozen junk from the back freezer. The critic gave him 1 star. Not out of pity, but out of obligation to review what he ate. I watched our online reservation system from my laptop. The entire next month, which had been booked solid, just evaporated. One by one, the red, reserved tags turned back to green, available. By noon, every single reservation for the next 30 days was gone. I didn't post the video myself. That would have been messy, a crime of passion. My revenge was a strategy, not a tantrum. My lawyer, Ms. Verma, handled the leak perfectly. We gave the 45-second file, downloaded from the restaurant security cloud, which Marco had forgotten I set up, to a third-party investigator. He created a brand new, anonymous email account from a public library computer. The email was sent to only one person, a local food blogger named Gourmet Gabby. Gabby loved drama, and she hated Marco ever since he'd been rude to her at a press event 2 years ago, calling her just a blogger. The email was simple. Subject, the truth about Marco's. The body just said, heard the critic's 1-star review? You're only hearing half the story. Watch this. Attached was the MP4 file. I waited in my apartment refreshing her feed. It took her less than an hour. She posted it with a giant red headline, shocking. This is what really happens in the kitchen at Marco's. She wrote, we all heard the critic's review. Now we know why. This is Marco Griffin abusing his wife and staff. This is the real passion he was talking about. The match was lit. The video didn't just get attention, it exploded. It was like throwing a match into a fireworks factory. Gabby's post was shared 10,000 times in the first hour. By the next morning, it was on the local news. By that evening, it had over 1 million views. 2 days later, it hit 5 million. It was the only thing the city's food scene was talking about. The public tide didn't just turn, it was a tsunami. The best part was watching Marco's tearful Instagram video. All the sympathetic comments, stay strong, Marco, were buried under a wave of fury. This is the passion you were talking about, one person wrote. He's not heartbroken, he's an abuser, another said. Team Phaedra. A new comment read, and suddenly, Team Phaedra was everywhere. A hashtag started trending in our city. Hashtag Marcos is over party. His fake charm was useless against the cold, hard video. He had built his entire brand on a fake image, and I had just shown everyone the ugly, real man behind the curtain. He couldn't delete the comments fast enough. His reputation was burning to the ground, and I was just getting warmed up. While Marco's restaurant sat dark, Phaedra's was born. We spent 3 weeks in a frantic build-out. Victor, true to his word, poured money and resources into the space. My old staff, Leo, Alex, my line cooks, all showed up. They volunteered to help paint, prep, and set up the kitchen. The energy was electric, the opposite of the fear I used to feel at Marco's. On our grand opening night, I was terrified. What if no one came? What if this was all a huge mistake? But when Victor unlocked the glass doors at 7 p.m., my fear vanished. There wasn't just a crowd. There was a line around the block. People who had seen the video, old customers who missed my food, and new fans who just wanted to support Team Phaedra were all there, cheering. My new kitchen was open concept, no walls to hide behind. Everyone could see me. I was front and center, calling out orders, smiling, my loyal staff moving in perfect rhythm behind me. We weren't just serving food. We were making a statement. Every dish that left my kitchen was a masterpiece, a piece of my legacy. The applause when I walked the dining room at the end of the night was better than any 5-star review. It was our second week, a Tuesday night, and we were slammed. The buzz from the opening hadn't died down. It had only gotten louder. Suddenly, my new hostess came to the pass, her face pale. Phaedra, he's here. Table 7 is open, but I looked up. It was him, the critic from the City Chronicle, the one from that awful final night at Marco's. He had no reservation. He just walked past the hostess stand, ignoring her, and came right up to the kitchen pass. The whole dining room quieted down, watching. He looked me right in the eye. I was told I'd find the real chef here, he said, his voice loud enough for everyone to hear. I have 30 minutes. Feed me. My heart hammered. This was the real test. Leo, my loyal sous chef, was already moving to prep the braised lamb, my old signature dish. I put my hand on his arm. No. I turned back to the critic. I have just the thing. I scrapped the lamb. I wouldn't serve him a ghost. I made him my newest creation. A seared scallop dish with a complex, spicy sweet chili oil I'd been developing in secret. It was a risk. It wasn't my past. It was my future. I sent it out and didn't watch him eat. I had just gotten home after a 16-hour day, my feet aching but my heart full. As I was putting my key in my apartment door, I heard a sniffle from the end of the hallway. I turned. It was Isabella, the 20-year-old hostess. She was huddled by the stairwell, her knees drawn to her chest, looking small and miserable. She looked up when she saw me. He fired me, she cried, standing up. He said the video leak was my fault. He said I ruined him. He threw a stapler at me. She was a wreck, mascara running down her face. She looked up at me, her eyes filled with a mix of fear and anger. I have to give you this, she stammered, pulling a small, silver key from her pocket. He's been hiding it. I took the key, confused. What is this? It's a storage unit, she whispered, looking around. He's been taking cash from the register for months, every Friday and Saturday night. He called it skimming the cream. He said it was for our new life in a new city. She was a victim of his charm, just like I had been. He told me to keep it secret. But he's an animal. That key felt heavy in my hand. It was the key to his coffin. The next morning, I didn't go to the storage unit. My lawyer, Ms. Verma, insisted I stay away. She was smart. This was no longer a simple divorce case. It was a criminal matter. She hired a private investigator, a former cop, to go with her. They met at the storage facility at 10 a.m., armed with the key from Isabella and a court order to document everything. Ms. Verma called me an hour later, and even her calm, professional voice was shaking with anger. Phaedra, she said, you won't believe this. It wasn't just cash. The PI had to cut a lock on a large, heavy safe. Inside, there was over $80,000 in bundled $20 bills. But that wasn't all. The 10 by 10 unit was filled with cases of the restaurant's most expensive wine, the ones Marco always claimed weren't selling. There were also 3 pieces of original art, stolen right off the dining room walls. And tucked under the safe was the final nail, a second, black ledger book, detailing every single dollar he had skimmed from the cash register for the past 2 years. This wasn't just a divorce. It was felony-level financial fraud. 2 days later, the new review from the City Chronicle was released. I was in my kitchen prepping for dinner service when Leo, my sous chef, held up his phone, his eyes wide. Phaedra, you have to see this. The headline wasn't just good, it was a declaration. It was titled, I've found her. The critic, the same man I had served my new scallop dish to, didn't hold back. He gave Phaedra's a 5-star masterpiece. He called my food art a revelation. But he didn't stop there. He dedicated an entire paragraph to Marco. I was wrong about Marco's, he wrote. In fact, we all were. The restaurant was never his. The genius was always hers, hidden in the back, and we were all fooled by a charming front man. Phaedra Marquez is not just a chef. She is the chef. This is the best food in the city. He ended the review with a final, brutal line. As for the place across the street, don't bother. The lights are off, and the artist has, quite rightly, left the building. That review wasn't just a success. It was vindication. It was the truth. The critic's review was the final blow. Marco, who had been hiding out and living in his office for a week, finally had to face reality. He told me later, during the legal proceedings, what happened. He woke up on the office sofa, surrounded by angry letters and unpaid bills. He decided he was going to try to sell the last of the expensive kitchen equipment to pay for a lawyer. But when he went to unlock the front door of the restaurant, his key wouldn't turn. He pushed, confused, and then he saw it. There was a large, bright orange sticker plastered across the glass. It was an official eviction notice from the landlord. His blood ran cold. The notice, in big, bold type, cited multiple breaches of contract, including documented financial fraud, public scandal damaging the property's reputation, and most importantly, default on the original business loan. The locks had been changed. He was locked out. The landlord, who had once treated Marco like a king, had seized the entire property. He was officially homeless. That night, my team and I were celebrating. The restaurant was full. The 5-star review was framed at the hostess stand, and we had just broken our own sales record. My father, the man Marco had called broke, came in. He was smiling. He wrapped me in a huge hug. I'm so proud, Phaedra, he whispered. I hugged him tight, finally feeling a sense of peace. Dad, I'm sorry about what he said. About you. My father laughed a deep, happy sound. Oh, don't worry about that, Mija, he said. I just came from the bank. I wanted to give you some good news in person. I looked at him confused. What news? He was beaming. You know that loan I co-signed? The one he defaulted on? Well, I'm the one who called it in. The bank was very happy to go after his assets to cover the debt. They seized his only remaining one this afternoon. That flashy sports car he loved so much. It's mine now. I think I'll sell it. Marco was at his absolute lowest point. He had no restaurant, no home, no car, and no money. He was staying on a friend's couch, and he finally found out about the storage unit raid. He was a cornered, desperate animal. He did the only thing he could think of. He called Isabella. She told me she was terrified when his name popped up on her phone, but she had already spoken to Miss Verma and knew what to do. She picked up the phone and immediately hit record. You, he screamed, his voice hoarse. You ruined me. You betrayed me. You told her about the storage unit. Isabella said she took a deep breath, clutching the phone. She had to be brave. I didn't ruin you, Marco, she said, her voice surprisingly steady. You did that yourself. You hurled a plate at her. You stole from her. You lied to me. I just gave her the key. She said. He was silent for a long moment, just breathing heavily. Then he whispered, I'm going to destroy you, and hung up. She immediately sent the recording to my lawyer. He had just added, making a terroristic threat to his growing list of crimes. It was almost 2 a.m., and we had just finished the deepest clean of the kitchen. I was walking out the back door, heading to my car. The alley was dark, lit by a single, flickering fluorescent light. And he was there. Marco was leaning against the dumpster, and I almost didn't recognize him. He looked thin, unkempt, and his expensive clothes were wrinkled and stained. He looked like he hadn't slept in a week. When he saw me, he pushed himself off the wall. Phaedra, he said, his voice a hoarse whisper. He took a step toward me. Phaedra, please. I'm ruined. I have nothing. It was just a fight. A stupid fight. You can't do this. I stopped, my hand on my car door. I looked at this shell of a man, this pathetic, desperate man who had called me good for nothing. He was pleading. I just looked at him, my face calm. I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel pity. I felt nothing. You were right, Marco, I said, my voice clear in the night air. My father doesn't own a business. I paused, then pointed up at the bright, beautiful neon sign on my building. I do. I got in my car, locked the doors, and drove away, leaving him alone in the dark alley. The divorce court was cold and bright. Marco was there, but he wasn't the man I'd married. He was wearing a cheap, baggy suit that his public defender had probably given him. He stared at the floor. My lawyer, Ms. Verma, was a shark in a tailored blazer. She was prepared. She didn't just present a case, she executed it. She played the 45-second video of the plate throwing for the judge. The courtroom was silent as Marco's voice, screaming at me, filled the room. Then she presented the black ledger from the storage unit. Then the bank statements showing the hidden accounts. Then the final brutal piece of evidence, the audio recording of his threat to Isabella. I'm going to destroy you. Marco's public defender looked like he just wanted to go to lunch. He had nothing. The judge, a no-nonsense woman, didn't even hesitate. She granted the divorce on grounds of abuse and financial fraud. She awarded me 100% of all hidden assets, the cash, the wine, as restitution, plus damages. Marco was left with nothing but his own personal debt. He left the courtroom in handcuffs. The state was pressing criminal charges for his threats. 6 months later, Phaedra's was more than a success. It was an institution. We were so busy that I had decided to expand, to buy the space next door. I needed a new front of house manager to run the entire floor. I was in my new small office looking over resumes when my assistant buzzed me. Your 4 p.m. is here. The woman who walked in was nervous, but she looked different. It was Isabella. She was dressed in a simple, professional suit. Her hair was a natural brown, not the blonde I remembered. Ms. Marquez, she said quietly. Thank you for seeing me. I just nodded. I know this is crazy, she said, her voice shaking but determined. But after all that, I went into therapy. And I've been taking night classes in hospitality management. I'm not that girl anymore. I'm not. I want a chance to earn back my dignity. I looked at her, really looked at her. I didn't see a victim or a villain. I saw someone who, unlike Marco, was trying to take responsibility. The job is hard, I said. Probationary period is 3 months. You start tomorrow at 8 a.m. Don't be late. 1 year to the day after I had walked out of Marco's kitchen, I was walking on a red carpet. I was at the City Culinary Awards, and Phaedra's was nominated for Best New Restaurant. I was nominated for Best New Chef. When they called my name, I thought I was going to faint. My team, my old new staff, erupted in cheers. I walked on stage, my hands shaking, and accepted the heavy glass award. I looked out at the crowd. All the fancy critics and chefs, the same people who had once praised Marco for my work. A year ago, I said, my voice echoing in the silent ballroom, a man threw my food against a wall and told me I was nothing. He told me my passion was slop and that I was ruining his business. I saw the critic from the Chronicle nodding slowly in the front row. Tonight, I said, lifting the award, this is for every person in every kitchen who was told they were worthless. It's for every woman who was told to stay in the back. Your work matters. Your passion matters. You matter. I was in my kitchen. It was 2 years later. My kitchen, my rules. I was tasting a new dish, a complex mole, trying to get the balance right. The restaurant was full. The sound of happy, noisy customers, just a low hum in the background. At the bar, my father was sitting, laughing his head off at a story Victor was telling him. They had become unlikely best friends. At the hostess stand, I could see Isabella. She was my general manager now, and she was calmly training a new, smiling hostess, showing her the right way to greet a guest. My life was good. It was full. My phone buzzed in my apron pocket. I pulled it out. It was a news alert from the City Chronicle. Local restaurateur Marco Griffin arrested for tax evasion. I looked at the headline. I looked at the picture of him in his tattered dress being led from a halfway house. Then I deleted the notification. I turned back to my dish, dipped a clean spoon in, and tasted it again. It was perfect. Original. It was Phaedra's.